The idea of a dog in a cage for hours on end, spending most of its life cooped up and unable to interact with anyone or anything, is something that humans will often pity. They will feel sad for the sheltered dogs without their own people, looking up at passers-by with doleful eyes as if begging to be chosen. They will feel sad for the working dogs, energetic as ever, craving a job with their entire being, but being left to sit bored in a kennel for 20 to 24 hours a day. Outraged people will say this is unjust, it is unethical, that it is no way to keep a dog. And they're right. But why do we not extend the same outrage to horses? With horses, it is common practice for them to stand in a 12 by 12 foot box for hours on end, oftentimes anywhere from 12 to 24 hours a day. If they're lucky, they will have hay for entertainment and maybe bars between stall walls so that they can touch noses with other horses, getting some semblance of socialization. They may go out into small paddocks, often alone, with little to no ability to properly interact with other horses and develop the types of friendships that they crave as social animals. If they're unlucky, they will exist with boarded up walls in their stalls and their closest interaction with other horses being staring at them from across the aisleway, able to see but never close enough to touch. Humans are fooled by the idea of a clean, comfy, and safe area for their horse, with beautiful stained wooden walls and wrought iron bars, an aesthetically pleasing barn that makes everything clean and accessible for human enjoyment, but fails to provide basic needs for the horses. The horses may be fed small, set hay feedings a few times a day, gobbling up their meals in a matter of minutes or hours, and then often going for hours without. No entertainment in these confined little boxes, and without the vital need of near constant access to forage. After going without hay for an extended period of time, the horses' stomachs will hurt from the overproduction of stomach acid, damaging the walls of their stomach and creating painful ulcers when they don't have near constant access to hay. Their stomachs overproduce acid because they are trickle-feeding animals who are meant to be consuming small amounts of grass or hay on a near constant basis throughout the day. Desperate to get rid of the discomfort of their painful, empty stomachs, they may consume the wood of their stall walls or try to eat the bedding that they stand on. They get grumpy and frustrated due to boredom and physical discomfort. This can make them dangerous to handle as they take out their environmental frustration on those around them. When their innate and vital need for socialization with other horses goes unfulfilled, they may even become aggressive and fearful to other horses, unsure of how to properly interact with horses despite being herd animals. Interacting over a wall or a fence simply isn't enough, and the lack of ability to properly interact can leave horses frustrated and aggressive with each other. When chronically confined to small areas that don't allow for much movement or exercise, they will go without the movement their bodies crave desperately and that is so vital to their health. Standing in these small boxes for hours on end, they are unable to wander anywhere near the 10 to 25 kilometers per day that horses will do when they are offered the space to forage in a herd on large spaces. Their owners, well-intentioned, will think that riding them for 30 minutes to an hour a day, or a few times a week, will sufficiently make up for the deficit in physical activity that comes with the reduced space of constant stalling or only having access to small paddocks. But it doesn't, and as a result, the horses suffer. They are at far greater risk of colic, a digestive issue that is the number 2 cause of death in horses outside of old age. Nearly 10% of horses who colic die from it. Colic is directly correlated with the stress, restrained movement, and unnatural lifestyle of the stalled horse. Stalled horses are also at greater risk of musculoskeletal injury due to abstaining from movement for so much of the day before being ridden. As trickle-feeding grazing animals, horses are meant to eat small amounts of forage near constantly, all while moving around, and they suffer when they're made to stand listless and stagnant for much of their life. Their behavior also takes a toll. Unable to offload excess energy, they may become difficult and even dangerous to handle on the ground and ride. They may develop repetitive stress behaviors to help them cope with the boredom and unfulfilling environment. But, unfortunately, many people within the horse industry will view these behaviors as training issues or personality quirks because that is what they're taught to do. when in reality there is substantial evidence that these stress behaviors that we see in horses, particularly the repetitive stress behaviors, only exist in domesticated horses and have not been seen in free-roaming wild horses. We also know that dangerous behaviors under saddle and on the ground are increased in risk in stalled horses due to them being more explosive and erratic in their behavior. Humans may label these difficult horses as naughty and physically punish them for misbehavior because that's oftentimes what they're taught to do. They may use harsher equipment, harsher bits to help them control these difficult horses. They may ride the horse until they're hot and sweaty to try to get the energy out of them, failing to realize how controlled exercise, where the horse is at the mercy of the demands of the human, does not compare to autonomous movement and the ability to make choice and engage with things within their environment. Us humans often underestimate how important autonomous movement is for horse welfare. When we think that riding or use of equipment such as hot walkers is a replacement for turnout for horses, we are missing the mark because all of these things require the horse to engage in exercise completely on our terms, not allowing them for any autonomy or play, something that is so important for their well-being. We underestimate the deep bonds that horses will form with each other when they are allowed herd mates. We fail to recognize the deep friendships that they form and how long they remember their friends for. Even months or years after being separated from their buddies, they will remember them if ever reunited. We break these bonds haphazardly and don't consider the damage that this does to horses. We don't consider how this deeply emotional species is impacted by choices that we make flippantly without thinking about how it impacts them. Us humans may laugh and poke fun at horses' repetitive stress behaviors, thinking of the horses just being quirky or silly, and we mean well, but we have all been taught to normalize these behaviors unless we actively try to unlearn this or are just lucky with the types of idols that we're initially introduced to when we enter the horse world. It is so important that we don't reduce the potential damage that we're doing with certain normalized care practices as more and more evidence comes out showing need for change in the horse industry. It is not our place to reduce or downplay the suffering that horses have to go through when they are not having their needs properly met, especially when you consider the fact that most horse owners board their horses and only see their horses a few hours a day, or possibly only a few hours a few times a week. They aren't watching the horse on a day-to-day basis for a long enough time to really fully take in how boring their horse's life must be living in a stall and without access to proper socialization with other horses. Humans get to leave the barn after they're done playing with their horse and go on to their jobs, visiting with friends, playing sports, going to school, spending time with loved ones, or engaging in other hobbies and activities that they like. They have the ability to make choices and do things that they enjoy to help entertain them and fulfill their lives. While us humans are off fulfilling our social needs and making decisions that enrich our own lives, we often fail to consider how long our horses might be remaining in a small walled room with little to no entertainment. We fail to consider what the horse is doing during all of these hours that we, as humans, are able to self-entertain and enrich our lives with socialization and fun activities. We fail to consider that our horses are entirely dependent on us to provide an enriching life for them. They can't just open the door and leave to go out with friends. They can't just pull out their cell phone and get a dopamine fix while in a small room or waiting in line like us humans can. Comparatively, most of us humans cannot even fathom the boredom and frustration that would come with such an understimulating, unfulfilling environment. The closest comparison we might see is the life of prisoners in jail, controlled by others in more powerful positions and confined to boxes, at the mercy of those in charge for what they're allowed to do on a day-to-day basis. But what crime did horses commit to be confined to a similar type of lifestyle? Humans often make these decisions for their horses with good intentions. They think that they're providing them a warm, dry, and safe place to keep them clean and keep them from getting injured. But it is so important that we remember that horses aren't just vehicles for us to pick up and put away as we see fit. They are living and breathing creatures who have their own wants and needs, and if we are more willing to put them at risk of injury for our own pleasures, like with riding, than we are for their own well-being, such as with turnout, then there is a big problem that we really need to look at and reflect on. Us humans usually mean well, but we are taught that this is the normal care and behavior of horses from the time we start riding. We often don't know better. From a young age, equestrians are introduced to horses under these circumstances. They often haven't known anything else, and they take on the belief system of the self-proclaimed experts who teach them everything they know from the beginning. Surrounded by stressed horses, we learn to view stress behavior as normal horse behavior. We don't know better. We just follow what we're taught, and when we're surrounded by people who have been around horses for much longer than us at the start of our riding careers, it's very hard to speak up about what we see, even if we're uncomfortable with it initially, and so eventually we learn how to tune it out. From a young age, equestrians are introduced to horses under these circumstances. They often haven't known anything else, and they take on the belief system of those around them who teach them everything that they know. Surrounded by stressed horses, they learn to view stress behavior as normal horse behavior. They don't know better. They're doing their best and just following what they're taught. They enter into the horse world joyful and with a love for horses, but they are taught to show their love for these magnificent animals in the wrong way and often end up harming them as a result. Eventually, a time may come in their life where they're exposed to criticism of normalized horse care and training practices due to welfare concerns, and this may frustrate them. They may react with anger, having their entire belief system uprooted and grappling with the idea that the lifestyle they've offered their beloved horse could possibly harm them. Since they don't mean to cause harm and the idea of having done so is so painful to accept, many people stay in denial. And so the cycle continues. The horse is left to pay the price for human ignorance. These animals give us so much. They are kind, forgiving, and empathetic creatures. Even when they are kept in inadequate living situations, they just do their best for us. When horses are allowed to live as their species is intended to, with ample ability to socialize with other horses, they thrive. They become less unpredictable and reactive because they're able to self-exercise and get needed social interaction and environmental stimulation. They do not engage in aggressive and dangerous behaviors as often, or at all, due to the lack of physical and emotional discomfort. They are no longer responding to a deep lack of fulfillment with their environment. They can wander, run, graze, and play with other horses and forage on grass or hay, keeping their stomachs full and protecting them from ulceration. And as a result, they become so much happier and more engaged with the environment. Their personalities blossom and develop, and they learn how to love interactions with the humans around them to an extent that they are not able to when they're existing in a frustrated state. They become less prone to digestive issues like colic. Their bones and soft tissues become stronger due to frequent use. Their hooves become stronger and healthier, allowed to move across different terrains and cover more distance. The true beauty of a horse is in offering them a fulfilling lifestyle. It will forever change your relationship with your horse and your perception of horses the more you surround yourself with horses who are not trapped within the confines of stressful lifestyles. All of the movies and media that we see of horses freaking out, bucking off, and injuring humans speak for how normalized it is for horses to behave dangerously. And yet we still fail to properly identify some of the most key factors in these dangerous events occurring so frequently, despite growing bodies of research showing the areas that we need to improve on in horse care and training, and how they influence the dangerousness of these beautiful animals. We owe it to horses to do better, and this starts with re-education on how they're meant to live and be cared for. A small box is no life for a grazing herd animal. A life of isolation is no life for a social creature. Humans, try as they might, cannot make up for these deficits in care that depriving horses of socialization with other horses and the ability to self-exercise causes. But we can start to develop more horse-friendly care practices. We can tackle the issue of urbanization and discover more welfare-centered ways to keep horses, even in cities. We can make a major difference in the lives of our horses, but it all starts with accepting that there actually is need for change. The horse industry is a world of horse-loving individuals. We have just been taught to love them in the wrong way. It is time for us to show our love in a way that they will understand. Much of the world as we know it has been built with the help of horses, being the strong animals that they are to help us create the world that we live in now before we had all the machinery that we do. And now that they are no longer essential for work, we can improve their lives to a degree that we might not have been able to in the past. And we also know more about them now, so with newfound knowledge, we can improve their welfare. Neglect doesn't only refer to skinny, malnourished horses who aren't being fed enough. It doesn't only refer to horses who are being physically abused. It can and does include shiny, fancy, expensive, glossy-coated sport horses who might be doing very well in their respective disciplines, but spend the vast majority of their daily time budget alone, isolated, and in a small box, unfulfilled. So let's make the next horse industry trend, normalizing horse-friendly care. And the idea that all horses need and are deserving of socialization and room to self-entertain, because after all, they are highly social herd animals, and it is no secret the degree to which they suffer when we isolate them and keep them in too small, understimulating spaces. It is time that we do better for these magnificent creatures and set a higher standard of welfare for the other 23 hours of their lives outside of their use in horse sport.